What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video as huge news dropped a couple of hours ago about the New York Giants. I was live streaming the Mets game while it happened. Otherwise, I would have had a video up sooner. And I was in complete shock when I initially heard the news that the New York Giants were going to be moving on from three players, that being Corey Coleman, who, of course, is the big name, Sean Chandler, and Chad Slade. The other two names, of course, aren't huge shockers. Those were guys that we thought to be bubble guys to begin with. They made the initial 53-man roster. Now, the Giants, of course, today went out there and they acquired three players off of waivers. And the initial thought process, pretty much by everybody, was that the New York Giants would be putting two players on IR, Mayo, and obviously Xavier McKinney, and they'd only be releasing one player. Well, that does not seem to be the case. We'll have to wait and see what this means for the rest of the New York Giants once they put those players on IR. Do they call some players up to the practice squad? Also talk about some of the players that the Giants currently have already said are definitely going to be on the practice squad. John Halapio was offered. He declined. But there are 12 names, at least from what I see, on Giants Wire that are confirmed on the practice squad. One glaring omission of a guy that I certainly thought would have been back, and we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. But obviously the majority of this video is going to be focused on Corey Coleman and his replacement, Damian Ratley. When I made that video, I tried to do as much research as I could before I was going live on Ratley. Not a guy that I thought was going to have a big role with this team, mainly because I thought he was going to be behind Corey Coleman. Going into the offseason, I thought that the New York Giants had a clear top four wide receivers, especially when you heard how well Corey Coleman was playing in camp. We heard great write-ups. When we saw the scrimmages, he was playing great. Now, things that have come out from people in the press from, after talking to Joe Judge and things like that, was that he was doing it mainly with the second team, wasn't getting a lot of experience with Daniel Jones, and maybe now we're starting to hear, I guess we're finding out why. But last year, Corey Coleman was a guy that we really had high expectations for going into the year. As a matter of fact, I thought there was a good chance he was going to be the number 3 wide receiver. Obviously, Slayton was in his rookie year. We didn't know a ton about him yet before he had the injury in training camp. And then he worked hard, he got back, looked like he was in good shape, and he had made the 53-man roster. So we thought for sure he'd be here. Well, then the Giants go out there and they make the claim for Ratley, and now it looks as if they're moving on from Corey Coleman. Corey Coleman, of course, came here in 2018, a former first-round pick, number 15 overall. Giants brought him in 2018, did great in terms of the kick returns, not so much as a receiver, but he was really good kick returner and was thought to be a guy with some upside, being that he was a mid-first round pick and didn't get the opportunity last year due to injury, and he will not get the opportunity with the New York Giants. According to several reporters, the Giants, although they had the option, will not be bringing him back, or at least that's the plan. The reason for it, well, Joe Judge came out and said that they were looking for a receiver with some more speed, which is going to bring me to Ratley. But before I get into that, I want to make sure I say the names of the guys that are definitely on the practice squad. Alex Bachmann, who was a guy that had a great camp, did a great job for the New York Giants from everything that you heard. As a matter of fact, I thought he was a guy, if they were going to go with 6 receivers, which maybe they still will, had a chance to make this team. Cooper Rush will be on the practice squad, and I think that's important. He brings some knowledge to the playbook. I think he can help out Daniel Jones in the quarterback room. I think it makes a lot of sense. Jaron Williams, the cornerback. Tyler Haycraft, the offensive lineman, who did a pretty good job in camp. Johnny Holton is on the practice squad, and I'm not surprised there. He's another guy that I think could be a special teams contributor. He's a veteran wide receiver. He's been in the NFL for 4 years. Kaysen Tinker will be the backup long snapper. Kyle Murphy, the offensive lineman, who was a guy a lot of people had high expectations for going into the year. Austin Mack, the wide receiver from Ohio State. Derek Dillon, the wide receiver from LSU with the speed. Nico Lalos, the defensive end, did make the team. They have a backup kicker/punter, Ryan Santoso, and Ryan Lewis, who they just picked up, is a former cornerback for, I forget which team it was, but he hasn't played. Oh, Miami. He does have some experience in the Patrick Graham defense. So those are the guys on the practice squad. The one guy that stands out to me that isn't there is Benjamin Victor, and maybe he's on there, and maybe this list isn't updated, but it seems to be pretty updated because they signed Lewis pretty recently. But that is 12 names. They have 16 spots, so we'll wait and see if Victor is on that, and maybe he is while I'm making this video, but I did not see his name, at least as of now, on that list, and it is a list that already includes 3 wide receivers, that being Holton, Mack, and Derek Dillon. The New York Giants, as of now, have 5 wide receivers still on the 53-man roster, being that you have bored, you cut Coleman, but you bring in Damian Ratley, which brings me to Ratley, and then I'll get a little bit more back to Coleman. Ratley, when I did a little bit more research, he's tall, he's fast, and Joe Judge came out and said that he was looking for a guy with more speed. He has limited exposure to special teams. He's only had 1 kick return throughout his entire career. that was last year. He is 6'2", and during his pro day, at least once, from the notes that I was able to pick up, read a 4.39 40. He's still young. He's 24 years old. He's a former 6th-round pick and was kind of buried on the depth chart for the Cleveland Browns. And maybe he's a guy that comes in here and surprises a lot of us and gets an opportunity with the New York Giants to be that guy that could take the top off of defense. Certainly has a lot of speed, and he's got height. It's a good combination. I've said with a number of other receivers, you can't teach that. So I actually like the Ratley pickup. He did have 200 yards last year in limited opportunities. So I think that's a good pickup. I am very surprised, though, with us moving on from Corey Coleman. I thought going into the offseason that was a given. I think most of us thought going into the offseason that it was a given as long as he was healthy. And you saw that he was healthy in the scrimmages. You saw how well he was playing. And I would think somebody's going to give him an opportunity out there on the open market. And at the end of the day, all I could say is this, man. I was rooting for Corey Coleman. He was definitely one of the guys I was rooting for a lot. He was coming back from that injury. He's a guy that I definitely think could have helped us in special teams. He was a great contributor there in 2018. And he looked to be back to where he was in 2018. But as Giants fans, all I can say is we got to trust Joe Judge. And, it's still his first year. It's a minor move. Is it something that I'm going to go absolutely flip out about it and cause a catastrophe? No. The guy was a 4th wide receiver that we thought was going to be a kick returner for the football team. And he definitely could have helped us. And hopefully a guy like Ratley could do just as well, and if not better, if we're deciding to go with him. But I'm surprised he's not on the team, but we can't flip out as fans. We have to give Joe Judge the opportunity to build the roster that he wants to build. He saw guys out there in the open market with Ratley and the other 2 gentlemen that he brought in that he thinks could really help his football team. They made some waiver claims, but I'm not going to lie to you guys. There's definitely been a couple of surprises, and we thought that Conley was the biggest surprise. Well, turns out that Coleman was. Now, Conley was a guy in the back of my mind I always thought could be cut, mainly due to the fact of his injuries. Now, he's come out and said that injuries had nothing to do with it. He just didn't make the team, Ryan Conley. And the only thing that makes sense to me there is this. The reports came out that the Giants were hoping to get Conley back on the practice squad after waivers and hoping nobody claimed him. They drafted 5-6 running backs, it seems, in this year's draft. He wanted to roster all the guys that he liked, that he put his stamp of approval on Joe Judge, and Conley just didn't make the cut. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. They had money committed to Mayo. They couldn't cut him due to that. And Conley was coming back from an ACL injury, but I wish him nothing but the best. And I wish Corey Coleman nothing but the best. And I wish he was a New York Giant this year. I really do. And I think he'll do a great job wherever he goes if he gets the opportunity. As far as his primary role with this team, what it was going to be, I think it was going to be as a kick returner. And that begs the question, who's going to be returning kicks now? Well, it could be Corey Ballantyne. He did that some last year. Could definitely see him. I'm sure there's a couple of other guys. Maybe a guy like Damian Ratley could be returning kicks. Last year, like I said, he had 1 kick return from what I saw with the Cleveland Browns. He does have speed, and maybe they're looking at him in that aspect. You have guys on the practice squad who maybe a guy like Derek Dillon, maybe you could call up at one point to be the kick returner. But that's definitely a hole that needs to be filled, and we need to figure out who it's going to be. And I'm sure Joe Judge knows right now, but we'll see, But I thought Coleman was definitely going to be returning kicks for this football team. He won't be. He'll maybe be returning kicks somewhere else, but it will not be as a New York Giant. And I'm still a little bit in shock here. Still a little bit surprised, but it's not something that I think us as fans should go crazy about. This is a guy, if we're being fair, even though he was a fan favorite and a guy that I really liked, who was a bust. I mean, to this point in his career, to go 15th overall and be as poor, bad as he was with the Browns. He came here, he played well for us for 8 games in terms as a kick returner. People forget he wasn't catching any balls, but he was a guy that I think, if given the opportunity, may have been able to be a decent receiver for us this year. But this happens every year. We all fall in love with players in training camp that we think are definitely going to be big contributors. They don't make the team. People flip out, and then we find new players that we fall in love with. And hopefully that's the case here. But yeah, I thought Coleman for sure was going to be a contributor this year. He won't be. Instead, Ratley will be on the team. Now, Ratley, like I said when I did my research, he's a guy I'm encouraged by. He's a guy that I definitely see the attraction to. He's young, he's fast, he's tall. You can't teach those things. And hopefully he helps out this New York Giant football team. And finally, what I'll say is the roster's here. For the most part, we know our team. There may be a couple moves here and there. We know the 53-man squad we're going to have going into the season, and all we can hope for as fans is that Joe Judge made the right decisions, and this team's ready to compete Week 1, Monday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.